Yeah, so let's talk about that transition. I mean, most fencers, I think this is fair to say, that do try and make senior teams are start trying to make them a little more actively in college, going to the world circuit stuff before they transition out of college. But I think your path is a little bit different, right? You didn't attend the senior
Yeah,
circuit until after
I
that.
hadn't been to a World Cup until January 2017, the year after I graduated.
And why was that?
I just wasn't part of the plan. I was in school, and Columbia is hard. Academically, it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard, and I needed. I'm sure. I mean, there's people who can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Who do the senior circuit. A couple people pop into my mind just right off the bat. Like, they're succeeding on the senior circuit, they're doing well in college, and they're like acing their classes.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew that I couldn't handle that workload.
Mm-hmm.
Um, College fencing and school was enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to make sure that I could deliver in both of those
Mm-hmm.
aspects of my life without adding on the whole international travel and learning how to do the World Cup circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So I just focused on college fencing and school
And
while I was at Columbia.
And so then, when you made this transition, how was it? I mean, there's a lot of guys, especially in epee, because I think the life cycle of epee athletes is a little bit longer than in foil or saber. So it strikes me as, especially in the top 12, the travel team, there's a lot of guys that have been doing it for years and years and years and years. How was it like transitioning onto that team? Fencing, World Cups are a really different animal than NCAA's, than anything in the U.S. How was that transition for you?
It was an odd transition, and I don't think it would be the normal path because I was already a pretty well developed fencer by the time I started going to World Cup. So
Mm-hmm.
the first World Cup that I went to was in Heidenheim, 2017 in January, and I was on the team. So there was a team event there, and I was fencing the team event, and I had never been to a World Cup. I had just won the December NAC the month before that, and a lot of people weren't fencing that season because the Rio Olympics had just happened the summer
Mm-hmm.
before, right? So it was like fresh set of faces, a lot of people taking time off. I had done well, like 2 NACs, and I was on the team. Like, that never happens.
Mm-hmm.
I made like an 8, and I won a NAC, and then all of a sudden I'm fencing on the team. So that was an interesting first World Cup. I was on the team with Jason Pryor, Adam Rodney, and Cooper Schumacher. We fenced in Germany, and like you said, there's a lot of guys who've been doing it for a long time, and so, I mean, Jason and Adam were just, taking me and Cooper kind of under their wing
Mm-hmm.
right off the rip. Like, great mentors, and just helping everyone get like used to how to do that, because I mean, we were trying to qualify a team, like, even at that first World Cup,
Mm-hmm.
January 2017, 6 months after the Olympics in Rio,
Mm-hmm.
the focus was qualifying a team for Tokyo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what we were talking about. And so, a lot of the older guys were like already getting everyone hyped up and
Mm-hmm.
in the right mindset to start
I,
working towards that.
I think what might be kind of important here for people listening that might not know the history of the U.S. men's FA team, I think you probably know this better than I do, but if I remember correctly, it was back in 2012 for the Olympics that we had a very strong men's FA team, but there was no team event in men's FA then.
Exactly.
They had won
20
Worlds, I think, the year before, right? Or
No, they won World Championships 2012. So, like, that would have been the Olympics, right?
Mm.
That's like, it was that event basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Seth Kelsey, Soren Thompson, Cody Mattern, and Ben Bratton.
Mm-hmm.
Won World Championships in 2012, but we haven't qualified a men's FA team to the games since 2004, I think.
Mm-hmm. And most of those fencers you just named, I think, retired after that event, right? They didn't stay on.
Yeah, only Seth and Cody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was after that event. They definitely fenced after that.
But at least at the time you're joining, this is sort of a new guard that's developing of the U.S. men's FA team, right? It was not.
No, I mean, Soren and Ben are still there. They're still
yeah.
in the mix
I guess
right
this
now.
is true. This is true.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So what was it
I
like?
bet fencers have a long shelf life, bro. You can,
As a foil fencer, I always forget this.
Yeah.
But no, okay. So you've joined them, and at the point of you going to your first World Cup, you're on the team. Some of the names we just mentioned though are still competing, but they're not. What was that like? Was it friendly? Was it hostile? Was it like? And then
No, it wasn't hostile because they did it smart, man. Soren and Ben weren't at that World Cup. They were taking time off because they had just probably finished like a 18-month grueling ramp up to Rio.
Mm-hmm.
But the team didn't qualify, and then Jason Pryor was the only one that earned the individual spot for the U.S., so they weren't there. I mean, I don't even remember exactly who was at that World Cup. I just remember who was on the team. But they took some time off after that.
And I guess, so you mentioned the way you just said grueling now makes me think that you've like found some sort of deeper appreciation for what that experience is like over the last couple of years when you've been doing the circuit full time. What's that experience like of traveling, so frequently to all these competitions, be it World Cups, be it NACs, and trying to make the team for the last couple of years? Or I guess succeeding in making the team, but...
It's hard. Like, fencing is very unique because the off season is very short and you're in season for a long time. It's not like other sports where you're trying to peak for one event at the end of the season, because you have to deliver at domestic and international tournaments all year long. The first World Cup's in October, first NAC's in October, and the last tournament to make the team is in April, but you can't stop there because there's tournaments in May that count for the next year. So, you're competing from October through May, and then you have Pan Ams and Worlds. And that's really where you want to be fencing your best. A lot of times those end at the end of July. You have August, basically, a few weeks in August to like take some time off and get your body right. But then you're right back in. You have a month in September to get back into fighting shape, and then you're at it again for another year. So one of the harder things to balance is like actually training and balancing training and competing, right? Because it's hard to really train when you're competing every 2 weeks. We have a condensed World Cup schedule now, so you would leave for a World Cup on Tuesday, get back the following Monday, and then you have exactly a week because you leave again the following Tuesday for another tournament. You're jet lagged, you're tired, you got work to catch up on, you're sore, and you got to like squeeze in a week of training before you're off again. And then there's a NAC and there's another World Cup, so it's like it's hard to balance it in. So I mean, I've just tried to squeeze in as much as I can in the off season, like in August and September, just as much volume in terms of like physical training that I can, so that that'll try to carry me through the regular season.
And I guess, do you have any advice for people who are starting to make this transition, who are going to their first international tournaments? Like, how are there anything that you wish you'd learned, or things that people told you when you first made that transition that helped you along the way, or that you wish you had known that could have made it easier?
Well, I'll assume that you're talking about people who I'm going to talk about epee. Because
okay, sure. Yeah,
for the most part, like in epee, when you're trying to do this, you're finished with school. Like you've graduated already. So I think the single most important thing, maybe the two most important things. One, like you need to be in the right training environment with the right training partners and the right coach. So like when you're drawing this up, if you just graduated and you're thinking about trying to make a senior team or whatever your goal is, right? But you're taking training much more seriously, like where are you going to be, who's going to be training there, and who are you going to be taking lessons from, who's your coach? That's like the first thing you need to figure out. And then you need to figure out how you're going to make that happen, how you're going to support yourself, right? The biggest challenge with trying to go to the Olympics is, I think, being able to pay for it. It's not easy in the U.S. I mean, there's a lot of support, and U.S. fencing gives the team members a lot of support, but if you're just starting out, like you're 12th, you just barely scraped onto the travel team, it's a really tough position to be in. So you have to get set up in some situation, whether it's coaching, whether you've got some side hustles or a flexible full-time job. That's like the second most important thing. You got to get that set up to actually allow you to train the way you want.
That's really good advice. That's really interesting. And so I guess one more thing that I'm interested in. So your first season in the international circuit, you did well. You stayed on the team. The second season, I think, is fair to say, was sort of a breakout season for you, right? 2018.
No, the first season I didn't do that well.
Oh, you didn't do that well.
First season. Well, so yeah, I started. I'll run you through the whole thing super quick.
Yeah.
January 2017, that was my first team event, and my only team event that season. So I was like third or something after those NACs, and then I fell out of the team points, and I didn't make the team. So I wasn't at Leipzig 2017, but I had made a top 16 in Paris in May, just before Leipzig. But that counted for the next season, the way they do the points. So I didn't go to Leipzig, but that top 16 counted for Worlds 2018 in Wuxi. So then the next season, honestly, it wasn't a good season. I don't think I made any second days at any World Cups in 2018. In the 2017-2018 season. No second days. I just had that one top 16 from Paris. It was a hard adjustment, I mean, fencing World Cups is so different from fencing NACs. I did well at all the NACs.
What's one of the differences that people I think that might not know about?
I mean, there's so many differences, man. Like, first of all, you're flying halfway around the world on a 6-hour time difference to compete, in a foreign city. That's like a hard enough hurdle to deal with as it is. And then,
especially, I'll throw this in that I think people sometimes don't appreciate that for American fencers, you are flying for a 6-hour time difference where almost everyone you're competing against maybe had a 1-hour time difference.
Yeah, all Europeans, like, they just get to go to sleep. They probably drive from their house and just over to the tournament in the morning. And, we're like all screwed up with the time change. And I mean, it's just a harder tournament. It's like men's epee is completely nuts. I mean, like, we had a tournament last year in Paris. It was 350 people.
Wow.
In the tournament, which is crazy.
And I guess it's comparable in size to a NAC, but I think the depth of power level at World Cup is like incomparable.
It is, and the other thing about epee is, you have a long shelf life, like we said, so people stick around for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So they might not be top 16 in the world anymore, but you have former Olympic champions, former world champions fencing on the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I first started, Paolo Pizzo was fencing on the first day. He had just won Worlds twice. He was the first day bout. Like, that could be your first bout, first DE of the day. You get Pizzo.
And probably it could also then be your last.
Right, exactly. Tagliario was out there too on the first day, Olympic champion. It's just really, really strong fencers that you have to deal with. So it's really hard. It's just a much harder tournament. It's nothing like a domestic.
Gotcha. And so when you made that first 16, what was that like? Was there any sort of mindset or thing that you'd done that you think contributed to your being able to make that great result?
I'll tell you why I made that 16. It's because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. It was like my third World Cup. I didn't know any names. I didn't know any people. I just had no clue. So I was completely oblivious, just like, yo, I'm out here, like, I could get it. Like, who's this guy? I don't care. Who's this guy? I don't care. And I beat like a bunch of really good guys, and I lost my bout 15-14 to this Russian dude. And, my teammates were like, I was insane. You beat Hooray. Like, you beat Glasgow. He was, I think, junior world champion. And I was like, I don't know these guys. Right. And so that was just a fluke, like, one-off thing. Like, that's not a repeatable strategy to do well at a World Cup. It's to just be ignorant. And that's why I probably didn't make a second day for a year after that.
But then, so you were able to repeat that result and actually improve on it, but later in your career. So
much later. Yeah.
So how was that transition?
I mean, it was a long transition, and epee is funny, man. There's ups and downs. You ride a lot of waves. So just whenever you're trending up and you're fencing really well, you just hold on for dear life and try to ride that upswing as long as you can.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Jake's career, the last season, so leading up to Budapest World Championships, you made was it 2 third places in a row, 2 medals?
Yeah. I was
is insane.
Seventh in Heidenheim, 2019, January, and then the next tournament was Doha, won a bronze medal at that Grand Prix. Following tournament Vancouver and won another bronze medal.
And that was those bronze medals were the first medals of U.S. epee fencers at a men's epee fencer at a Grand Prix in like tons of years, right? I remember seeing
in a while. I don't remember the last time that Seth had won a medal before that, but yeah. That season I won 2 bronzes, and Curtis McDowell won a bronze in Buenos Aires, and those are the first 3 individual men's epee medals in a long time.
That's awesome. And so you guys obviously worked really hard, but what contributed to that sort of string of great results for both you, I guess, and Curtis? But was there some relationship between those results happening sort of?
Yeah, I think definitely, man. I mean, me and Curtis have been feeding off each other's energy and results for a few years now, like since we got on the circuit. I made that 16 in Paris, and then Ben Bratton made a top 8 in Budapest that year. And that kind of set the bar high. It's like, okay, like this group of guys can pull results like that, right? And then Curtis made an 8 in Paris. Curtis made an 8 at Worlds. And that definitely gets you thinking, like, all right, like Curtis is popping off. I want to make those kind of results too. And then I made an 8 in Heidenheim, and then I won a medal. And Curtis is probably like, all right, like Jake won a medal, now I want to win a medal. So he goes to Buenos Aires and he wins a medal. You know, it's like, it's just raising the bar for each other and just like meeting each other like where we get to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very productive kind of like, I wouldn't even call it competition between the two of us. We're just trying to get as good as we can and raise the bar and, you know, both be up there.
Awesome. And, you know, I think a big thing about the men's epee team in the U.S. that's a little bit different from some of the other teams is like, you know, there's a question of, it had been a bunch of years since we qualified the men's epee team. And you guys officially were qualified for, I think, this summer. That is now postponed to next summer. But I think that means you guys remain qualified as far as I understand. But in any event...
A lot of question marks right now, but based on what I understand, it sounds like the men's epee team still has 4 slots in Tokyo.
Which is awesome. I mean, I guess there's a lot of that, but I guess building up to that season, what was the season like on the team event? Because team can be really different, I guess, than individual. But you guys, at the time, I think both you and Curtis were top 16 in the world sort of that last season. What was it like sort of competing as a team against some of the more experienced teams that had, you know, several world champions, had other accolades to them? How have you guys been growing as a team?
I mean, we have a great team chemistry, for sure. But something I definitely want to say is there have been a lot of guys that have touched this team to get us to be able to qualify for Tokyo. So you always think of the national team as 4 guys, and in a lot of other weapons it doesn't really rotate as much as it does in epee. But I mean, like I said, from that first World Cup that I was at in 2017 in Heidenheim, the goal was to qualify for Tokyo, and there have been so many really good fencers that have contributed and won bouts on the U.S. team to get us in a good position to have a good ranking before this season, so that this season we could be in the best position that we could to qualify. So, just wanted to say it's not just the 4 guys that you'll see in Tokyo. There's a much larger group of about, you know, 15 to 20 men's epee fencers who were on this team and competed to qualify.
I think it's really important. And so, talking to you about that season for you, just shifting gears a little bit, the season for you individually, you know, make these string of great results, you're top 16 in the world. What's that like? Do things change? You know, you mentioned when you first showed up to that World Cup and you made your first 16, it was because you didn't know anyone, nobody knew you. I imagine that changed like the last 2 years, right?
It changes a lot. Yeah, being top 16, like, is great, obviously, right? Because you get a bye directly into the table of 64, so you don't have to fence the qualifying day on day 1. But it brings challenges with it as well, just like anything, right? You're at the next level, and now you have to deal with a lot. Like, first like few tournaments being top 16, I remember going for a few actions that I always hit, right? Like very reliable actions, some of my best stuff that I've, you know, been doing for years, and I just get slammed right away. Like, no hesitation, right? Someone just drills you on it. And we're like, wait a minute, what? That wasn't even close. You try it again, you get hit again. So it's like, now all of a sudden you're dealing with a problem where you have these actions that you've built up that are so good for so many years, and all of a sudden, you know, everyone knows who you are. Everyone's watched like your top 5 videos on YouTube, and they just know what you like to do. And you have to start really working much harder to hide your intentions and mix everything up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think this is something that people might not realize who are used to sort of this world of the international circuit is, especially, you know, with the second day bouts, you know who you're going to fence 12, 14 hours in advance. And so there's a big part of this game that involves sort of research the night before on your opponent. And especially once you get more well-known, there's more videos of you online, it's easier to do. I mean, do you do this during the tournaments? Like, what does your night before the second day look like?
Yeah, night before the second day, I'm definitely watching video on whoever I'm fencing. If there is video on them, sometimes there's not. But if there is, I'll watch it all. It's a little bit of a challenge sometimes to find video, because I really only like to watch the opponent for the day after fencing another lefty, someone else left-handed, because it changes so much. So, but there's always some video, and there's a lot of lefties out there who I try to watch them fencing whoever I have the next day. But yeah, that's definitely part of the routine.
And did that newfound recognition change how you had to fence? How have you been adjusting to that? You know, you mentioned some of your favorite action stuff working.
Yeah, so there was definitely a period of time where I stopped trusting a lot of my fencing
Mm-hmm.
because I was having a really hard time getting it to work. I love to flick to the hand. I love to take second tension parry. Those are two actions that I do well, and I do them a lot. And they weren't working that well. I couldn't get it. It was like really hard. And eventually I thought, well, I just can't do it anymore. Like I'm just not going to be able to hit the hand. I'm not going to be able to take a second intention parry. So I got to start working on other things. And I tried that for a while, and that didn't work. It's like
Yeah.
you develop a few actions that are world class, and then all of a sudden you try to develop another action that's also going to be world class. Like that's pretty hard. So it's what I decided is it's much easier to just practice hiding your better actions than it is to just learn some new things. So I've added a few tools to the box for sure. A few other actions that I'll mix in now, but more important is trying to hide what you're actually good at, and it just becomes harder.
And I
Most
imagine
people know what's coming.
The way you described that seems like that was something you had to learn through trial and error, which I imagine was like a difficult learning process.
Yeah, bro. I mean, I lost like my first bout in the 64 when I was top 16 for like 5 or 6 tournaments in a row. And
what's
a lot
that
of those
like?
bouts were against strong fencers, but a lot were bouts that I probably should have won. I mean, still everyone at a senior World Cup is a strong fencer. But a lot of those bouts I thought I should have won, and I was, trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, and I just wasn't really fencing like myself.
And so then, how has this year been for you? Sort of in that, I guess you kind of came this year in that situation, but still on the team. You're preparing towards the Olympics. Walk us through sort of what this year has been like for you so far. And I guess eventually we'll get to the sort of wrench that gets thrown in. But
yeah. I mean, anyone will tell you like qualifying for the Olympics and going through this season is just one of the most grueling and stressful experiences that you can go through. I mean, that was always the goal since I graduated, 4 years, like working towards that. And it's always a challenge to like get your results in and get the points so you can be on the team. But in Olympic year, everything is different. Everything is different. And you see it, like people start acting differently, friendships start being really strained. Stress is really adding up. So the Olympic qualifying season is tough.
And how have you been managing that stress, the intensity of it? I mean, how?
Not well.
Not well.
No, I'm kidding. But it's hard. It's really tough. I mean, I'm sure everyone has their own strategies, but I try to distract myself from it as much as I can. I work part-time in addition to fencing, so I think that's a huge advantage because I don't just train in the morning, come home, think about fencing, then go train at night, come home, think about fencing again. Like I have a bunch of hours every day where I'm very focused on something else, and I think that's super important, whether it's a part-time job or a hobby outside of fencing, like something to get your mind off of it, because the stress will get you if fencing is all that you're focused on, especially maybe not outside of Olympic year, but in Olympic year for sure. That's one way.
That's really interesting and insightful. I guess so. Then fast forward to the wrench that gets thrown in. How has it been when you first hear? I mean, I think the first tournament the women's épée Grand Prix got moved. I don't remember if the men's épée, like what's going through your head at that time, and sort of how has that evolved through now?
I mean, so much has happened over the last month. I mean, women's épée got moved. They didn't move men's épée. There was a Grand Prix in Budapest. But I know like the men's saber tournament in like a few weeks ago was supposed to be in Germany, and then they moved it to Luxembourg, and they were supposed to go to Italy, I think, and then they like moved it all over the place. So I mean, it's just been a wild ride, and it's tough because you're in the dark for a lot of it. I mean, you're just waiting for an email or from a call from someone to tell you what's going on. And otherwise, like, we're in the middle of Olympic qualifying season, right? Everyone's ramping up training. Everyone's like taking this so seriously, and all of a sudden, you don't even know where you're going in a few days. You don't know where your tournament's going to be. You don't know if your tournament's happening. And it's tough. I've had a lot of, high school friends, and other friends of mine, texting me being like, hey man, like what's the inside scoop on the Olympics? Like what's going on? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like they don't tell me anything that they don't tell you. Like I just am waiting for the CNN notification. Same as you. That's like, that's been the toughest thing. It's like, you're just waiting. Everything's very uncertain.
Wow. And so I guess they moved from language of cancellation to they postponed it 1 year. Was that a relief for you? Was that how did that change sort of your thinking around things?
I mean, I've gone through a roller coaster of emotions in the last month with, we're canceling it, we're postponing it. Nope, just kidding, we're canceling it. And then it's going on as planned. Nope, just kidding, like we're actually going to postpone it. But now that we know that they're probably going to happen in July of 2021, it's a wrench in the plan for sure, right? That's another year of training for the Olympics.
And I guess
I'm kind of looking at it on the bright side. I mean, it's another year of training, right? Mm-hmm. It's another year where you're just going to set a dream goal and another realistic goal. So I'm treating this time now more as the off season. I don't think we're going to be competing for a long time. Could be 6 months before I get back on the strip. So treating this as the off season, doing a lot of conditioning, a lot of physical preparation and a little bit of video, and just not fencing. I mean, I can't. So.
And I guess one thing that I'm curious to hear from you, because I think a lot of people don't also realize this, is like, to what degree does having another year of Olympic level training sort of change your life plans? Like I know a lot of people
just out by a year. I had plans for the summer after Tokyo and the following year. Whether or not that's training for the 2024 Olympics or doing something else, but that's all on hold for now.
And so right now your mindset is just doing whatever you can to get ready for this 2021 Olympics. Is that fair to say?
Mindset is to win those medals in 2020. Well, I guess not 2021, but in Tokyo. Yeah.
Awesome. And so what is your training at home look like? You said there's a little bit of videos, a little bit of conditioning. Is there...
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to my coach as much as I can, but I mean, it's hard, right? My coach he's a pretty old guy, so we're not doing video classes or anything. But we're talking about some mental preparation on the phone where we can. And it's just a lot of physical work. I've been doing a lot of running, a lot of body weight stuff. I don't have weights in my house. I don't have weights in my apartment here. So just making do with what I can. I got a big 10-gallon bucket full of rice that I'm doing bicep curls with.
Making do, yeah. Is there any
girlfriend jumping on my back to do squats and running in the neighborhood as much as I can, but it's definitely a challenge.
Is there any advice you'd have for anyone about sort of maybe mental training aspect? I know that's something that Alan, our friend, focuses on a lot, but any way to stay mentally sharp during this sort of uncertain, chaotic time? Anything that you
that's just not the focus that I've been aiming for. I'm not trying to stay mentally sharp right now because I don't think I need to, right? This is the off season. I'm considering this as the off season. This is now we did 95% of an Olympic qualifying year. There's 5% left, which is going to happen. We don't know when. So I think the best thing for me right now is to decompress a little bit, take the foot off the gas in terms of the competitive mindset. I mean, we've been going nonstop for months for events that count for the Olympics since May 2019. It's been a long time. So, I mean, we're not going to have a tournament for at least 3 months, at least. So for the next month, I'm just treating it like the off season, physical prep, get in really good shape. I'm doing some drills with my roommate. He's a Jeff Loss saber fencer. So I'm putting on the saber equipment, giving him a lesson. He's putting on the epee equipment. We're switching, and I'll take a lesson. So we're doing that so we don't lose anything. But I think I don't think it's a good idea to try to ride this out, staying in peak competitive mental shape. I think now's a better time to take a deep breath and kind of decompress on that. And then because there's too much up in the air, you don't know what's going to happen. Once they give you the tournament schedule, then you can start getting ready. It's pretty hard to just indefinitely stay sharp, right?
I think that's a really interesting way of approaching it. I think that's some really good advice. I think that you're spot on there. Is there anything
And
else?
there's other things outside of fencing right now that are super important. You know, like we're all focusing on just trying to stay healthy, focusing on, you know, staying in line with these social distancing guidelines and how to be safe going to the grocery store, and you know that's kind of the primary focus right now, honestly.
Awesome. Well,
Trying to get my parents and grandparents on board. That's a bigger challenge.
with the social distancing.
Yeah, with all of that.
Well, anyway, thank you so much, Jake, for joining. Is there any sort of last thoughts you might want to share with people? Anything else that you want to shout out?
Buy a wall target from Radical Fencing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Hope you found this insightful. If you haven't already, like and subscribe on our YouTube, our Facebook, and our Instagram. Follow us. You can follow Jake as well on Instagram. And I hope you enjoyed this. If there's anything else you want to see in future videos, let us know. Thank you guys so much.